So I think the most common question I get right now, whether it be in the comments on my videos or a lot of you who have been DMing me on Instagram or on Twitter, is when are you going to make a video about the trade rumors surrounding the Bulls and their interest in Vasilije Micic? Well, you guys know I generally don't like to make videos on rumors and speculation because more often than not, they turn out to not be true. However, I do feel that this one has a little more credibility than others, as it did come from Rob Schaefer of NBC Sports Chicago, who I do have a great deal of respect for, and because you guys have been asking me about it so much, I thought I would go ahead and do a video on it and provide my perspective, which is probably a little different than what most of you might think. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bull Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Guys, real quick, I had asked in one of my prior videos whether you would be open to me doing a live stream Q&A session, as I know some had asked about that in the past, and a lot of you guys were open to the idea of it, so I will likely schedule a Q&A live stream session potentially sometime this week, so be on the lookout for that. Yes, I will be showing my face. I know a lot of you have been asking about that, although I did do a video podcast with one of my buddies a few weeks back, which you would be able to see me there if you were curious. I'll leave a link to the podcast in the description in case you did miss it. Also, I am planning on doing a live stream reaction video to the NBA draft lottery in the small chance that the Bulls get lucky and fall into the top 4. Of course, if they don't, it'll probably be a pretty lame live stream reaction video, but whatever. Hopefully I'll be able to bring some good luck for the Bulls, and we'll see how it works out. So stay tuned for those. I'll have it scheduled in advance on the channel so you know when to expect it, although for the NBA draft lottery, that's already scheduled. That will take place on June 22nd at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Anyway, so I'm sure as most of you are aware by now, there was a report that came out last week that the Bulls have shown interest in the EuroLeague MVP guard Micić, who currently the Oklahoma City Thunder hold his draft rights to. Now, Micić was drafted all the way back in 2014 in the second round by the 76ers, but has yet to play a single game in the NBA, as he was a draft and stash player, similar to what the Bulls are currently doing with Marko Simonovic. Yes, I hopefully pronounced his name properly this time, as I did ask you guys to help me out with that, and I do appreciate you for that responded and giving me the correct pronunciation of his name. If anyone also wants to correct me on Micić, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but if I'm not, let me know in the comments. I would greatly appreciate it. Now, because Micić was drafted in 2014, nearly 7 years ago, you would be correct in assuming that he's not that young. I mean, he's not that old either. He's 27, and 27 is usually when a player is in the peak of their prime. But he's not your typical rookie who generally starts in the league between the ages of 19, 20, or 21. He was drafted when he was 20 and has since progressed into a really great player in the EuroLeague since he has been drafted. And of course, as I just mentioned, he was named the EuroLeague's MVP and also the Final Four MVP, leading his team to winning the championship. So those are very impressive feats. I mean, people get excited about Simonovic, but this guy is considered one of the best in the top leagues in the world, not named the NBA. Just for context, Luka Doncic also won the EuroLeague MVP before he was drafted to the NBA. Granted, Doncic did that at the age of 18, which is why Doncic is a generational talent and was selected in the top of the lottery. But even at 27, winning the EuroLeague MVP is nothing to just ignore. It is very impressive. Now, you might be asking, well, if this guy is so good, why hasn't he made his way to the NBA yet? Well, like any overseas prospect, especially those who are drafted and stashed for a later time, there is always the question about whether or not said player will be able to make the transition to the NBA, a very different style of basketball with most, talented athletes on the planet that exist within that league. And really, up until this season, Micić, although good and was continuing to get better, he wasn't really making headlines to the point where an NBA team would be chomping at the bit to bring this guy over to the US. And I'm mainly talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder, who own the rights to him, but only recently, as the Sixers owned his draft rights up until last year, when his draft rights were traded to the Thunder along with the Al Horford trade. The other reason is, well, his agent has made it very clear that if he were to come to the NBA, that he would be seeking a starting role in the league, which, let's be honest, most teams are not going to be willing to commit to a 27-year-old second-round pick having never played in the NBA as their starting point guard. That's just not going to happen. Now, not for most teams anyway, but players of Micic's caliber usually come in and they're slowly integrated into the NBA as a rotational player to see how they adapt and transition to the league, unless you're someone like Luka Doncic, who are rare exceptions. Even Nikola Micić, it took him a few months to really get up to speed on the pace and style of play in the NBA before he started really performing well when he was with the Bulls. Now, The reason these rumors of the Bulls being interested in Micić have come about is, well, it's no secret that the Bulls have been planning to address the point guard position this offseason. That's really been made clear ever since the trade deadline. Now, this report came out before Coby White suffered his injury that would now keep him out, and that's likely through training camp and potentially to the start of the next season, given that it's a 4 to 6 month timeline for when he'll be reevaluated for his shoulder injury. And now with the recent news of Coby White, I'm sure these rumors or interest from the Bulls have been heightened even further. Micić himself and the skills that he brings as a player are actually very useful skill sets that the Bulls could use. He's a 6'5" point guard that is a great outside shooter, a solid playmaker with great court vision, and because he's a little older at 27, he can bring some veteran experience and IQ to the game. So it makes sense that the Bulls would be interested in this guy and pursuing him. Now, you might ask as well, why would the Thunder want to trade his rights? Well, the Thunder are in full rebuild mode with a ton of young players and a ton of draft capital to keep building their team. Bringing on someone like Micić doesn't really fit their timeline because he's 27, and because Micić is seeking a starting role, he likely would stunt the growth of some of their younger players. Now, here are my concerns. As you probably saw from the title of this video, that I believe the Bulls should not pursue Micić in a trade, unless of course it's within reason. And I'll explain what I consider to be within reason in a sec. But my concerns are, one, what is it going to cost the team in terms of a trade for someone like Micić? Because some people have been saying that the Bulls should trade Coby White straight up for the rights to him. Like, no, it is absolutely not a smart move to trade a young 21-year-old player who has shown a lot of promise and potential. He's a hard worker and dedication to get better, for a guy who is 27 and yes, appears to be a nice player and may fit a need for the Bulls, but he has yet to play a single game in the NBA, whereas Coby at his young age has already shown he is capable of being a great NBA player. A lot of players that come overseas in their mid to late 20s, a lot of them don't end up panning out well in the NBA. They don't make the transition as most expected, and they end up playing a few seasons in the league, averaging, say, 10 to 15 minutes per game. So trading him for Coby White makes absolutely no sense. My other concern, and I guess I just kind of mentioned it, is that Micić is looking for a starting role in the NBA, which I get it for him, right? You know, if he comes to the NBA, he wants a big role and wants to get playing time. He doesn't want to be one of those overseas players who comes in and rarely sees time on the court. And because he's looking for a starting role, my concern is, do we really want to commit this guy as our starting point guard, a guy who hasn't played in the NBA, was drafted 7 years ago and is 27 years of age? Like, are we really not going to try for something better than that? I mean, when we heard that the front office was planning to address an upgrade at the point guard position, we kind of expected them to take big swings at some of these high quality point guards in the league who are going to be free agents. Are we really going to settle for a second round draft and stash player? I'm not saying that Micić can't be a great player in the NBA, and if you've seen some of his highlights, he looks like a very solid point guard, but I personally just have higher expectations for the Bulls in bringing in that playmaking point guard that we need to set up Lavine and Vucevic for success in maximizing their prime. And I would personally prefer a player who is a more sure thing that has extensive experience in the NBA already. So for me personally, I don't think it makes sense for the Bulls to pursue a trade to bring in Micić, not when you have the opportunity in front of you for all of these other free agent point guards. And of course, you still have Coby White, and you don't want to stunt his growth and development either. Why trade and lose assets for the rights to a player who may not end up panning out when you bring him in, as opposed to one of these free agents that you could get without giving up anything? Now, if the Bulls are suspecting that they're going to strike out on all of these top free agency targets, or if they actually do, say, free agency passes and all of these players that they were looking to bring and go elsewhere, or they stay with their current teams, then sure, it's worth pursuing a trade for Micić. Again, as I mentioned, within reason. Like, this guy was a, EuroLeague MVP, but you can't break the bank and move mountains to get him. Trading Coby White for him doesn't make sense. Trading Troy Brown Jr. and a second round pick, another trade proposal that I've seen, doesn't make sense. The max that I think we should be willing to give up is a second round pick and maybe Tomas Satoransky. That way the Thunder can get a veteran point guard in return. Or, even this one I hesitate to do just because he's so much younger. You trade the draft rights of Simonovic to the Thunder for Micić, which is something that would likely be more enticing to Oklahoma City because, they're looking for younger players, and given the fact that they're still in rebuild mode. But even then, is it worth giving a 21-year-old big man who has shown potential as a passing, playmaking, three-point shooting big man who still has room to grow and develop for a guy who definitely is a better player at this point, but likely has hit his ceiling in terms of his peak potential? That's really the question, right? The Bulls also don't have their first round picks for which they can trade that would be enough of an incentive for the Thunder to bite on, unless of course the Thunder would be okay with the Bulls 2025 first round pick, since that's the next first round pick the Bulls would have the availability to make a trade for, since you can't trade back-to-back first round picks. Even then, the more I'm thinking about it, I don't know if you would want to trade your 2025 first round pick, because who knows what the Bulls situation is going to be like by then. I don't know, maybe I'm being a little too harsh and downplaying the potential of Micić. I could be completely wrong, and that he would make a lot of sense for the Bulls. It's very possible he could be the perfect fit and would transition well into the NBA and be the perfect player alongside Lavine and Vucevic. But my point is he really the best that we're going to be able to get this offseason? Is he the best fit for the Bulls, and is he worth risking and giving up trade assets for when you have the opportunity to bring in some of these other NBA free agent point guards who are much more experienced and, in my opinion, much more talented? I want to hear what you guys think, though. Do you think the Bulls should look to make a trade with the Thunder for the rights to Micić, or do you think that the Bulls should pursue other avenues for the point guard position? Let me know in the comments, and as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan and you like daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.